From that memorable day in September 1926, when Monte Vista Christian School was opened, until now 70 years have elapsed, and countless young men and women have passed through the portals and gone out into the world better prepared to take the places of leadership awaiting them. Some have become ministers and missionaries. Some are successful businessmen and women. Some have entered the professions, and some are occupied with the high calling of homemaking.
This story begins with Robert Otis Price, who was born into a devout Methodist family in Tuscola, Illinois, on January 22, 1886, the second of 4 children. In 1891, the family moved to California, settling on an apricot and prune ranch in the vicinity of San Jose. There he attended grade school and high school. At the age of 15, he accepted the Christian faith and felt the call to the ministry. He enrolled at the College of the Pacific in San Jose, now University of the Pacific in Stockton. But when a few great Christian professors were dismissed and modernists hired in their places, R.O. Price, with other Methodist ministerial students, left the college. Price finished his college education at San Jose State, graduating in 1910. He played on the basketball and rugby teams during all 4 years of college. His was the first graduating class from San Jose State after it became a 4-year college. After completion of his college work, he accepted a teaching assignment in Kerman, California. About a year later, in 1911, he was married to Nell G. Caleb of San Jose, whom he had known since high school years. Together, they devoted themselves during the ensuing years to teaching and preaching in the San Joaquin Valley.
Mr. Price served as vice principal and later principal in the Fresno City Schools for 9 years, and then 6 years as teacher and principal in the county schools. He also served as a member of the County Board of Education. Mr. Price built a Methodist church while serving as principal of the Raisin City School.
It was during these years in the Fresno area that the seeds of the work of a Christian school first began to grow in the hearts of R.O. and Nell Price. Trends and conditions encountered in the public school system in which they taught and served challenged them to seek divine guidance in the establishment of a school where the needs of the soul could also be served.
Mr. Price felt our heritage was rich in Christian faith, but that it was being drained from our children by the public education system. Years later, when advertising his school, he expressed his feelings in these words: "If our land was so blessed while following biblical precepts and so full of crime and delinquency, since setting these aside, then we would conclude that we should do well to return to the faith of our fathers."
My father and mother visualize a school where young men and women, regardless of whether they live near or far, irrespective of race, creed, or position in life, whether they be children of ministers or from broken homes, all alike could receive a good education and at the same time learn to live together and worship together as one happy, wholesome family.
2 years after the birth of his dream, the reality seemed far off. He could not find a single denomination to back him. None shared his vision. The Reverend Leland Keyes, Reverend Don Weston, and Reverend Robert Craig, founder of Bethany College, were among the very few friends that encouraged him. But many people took a stand against his idea of a Christian school. But this man, with the determination and willingness to let God direct his paths, kept searching for the ideal location. Friends and interested people that heard of his search offered real estate in locations as far north as San Francisco and as far south as Los Angeles. Several places with large buildings were considered, but in his heart, this man loved farming and knew the income from a farm would help meet expenses of the school, also being able to raise fruit, vegetables, and meat for use in the dining room.
After those many months and many trips, putting thousands of miles on our beautiful Willie's Night family car, Dad and Mother and we two sons, Harold and Donald, were to spend the night with distant relatives, Stephen and Emma Murphy of Watsonville, the dear elderly Christian couple who always entertained visiting missionaries and ministers in their sizable ranch home. During the course of that evening, around the fireplace that would later become the center of his school, Dad told them of his dream. God had directed his path, for the Murphys then and there said to him, "We have hope for our ranch to be used in some Christian work, and would you consider it for the school you're planning?" This was the most promising site we had found. It contained 66 acres planted in apple and apricot orchards and vineyards, a 2-story, 8-room house, another 3-bedroom house with a usable basement, a barn and various large outbuildings, and as was the custom in those early days of naming most large ranches, it was called the Monte Vista Ranch.
So it was in 1925 Mr. Price resigned from his pleasant and profitable career, and in June of that year, he held his last graduation under the public school system. In his farewell speech, he said, "We are going to Watsonville to establish a boarding school where we can lead the boys and girls one step further, to know him, whom to know is life eternal." There were only a few dry eyes in the gathering of that friendly community. Thus a highly appreciated principal left with mixed emotions, but with a firm step toward what he knew he must do.
The summer of 1926 saw much planning, for the dream was materializing. A boarding school was to open on September 1, and much was to be done before that time. The Murphys moved out of their beautiful farmhouse into a tent on the front lawn until their plans could be finalized, giving the Prices access to the houses. Thus, the Monte Vista Ranch was fast becoming Monte Vista Christian School. When school opened in the fall of 1926, there were 45 students enrolled from grades 3 through 10. 14 of these were day students who paid $10 a month for tuition. The other 31 boarding students paid $30 a month for tuition and board and room. Work was begun on the magnificent administration building in 1928 and completed in 1931. Mr. Robert Ray, an Assembly of God minister, greatly assisted Dad Price and others in the construction program. With the building completed and a $12,000 indebtedness, the Depression came with sudden and devastating impact. Had not the Lord undertaken, the school would have gone the way of so many other enterprises. Dad's dear old friend, Henry Brooks of Fresno, a farmer and dedicated servant of the Lord, liquidated all obligations of Monte Vista. Mr. Brooks, along with Leo Westwater of Watsonville, Vice President of Granite Construction Company, and Ernest Frazier of Fresno County Board of Education, formed a nonprofit corporation and took title to the small piece of land on which the administration building was located, plus a right-of-way to the main road. The elder Murphys were no longer able to handle the property, and it passed to their heirs, who were not favorable toward Christian schools. They decided to sell the ranch. When people looked at the ranch to buy, they did not want it with a fenced-in school building in the middle of it. So it did not sell. This had to be God's miracle of preserving that land for Monte Vista. Mr. and Mrs. Minor Arganbright purchased the land when it was at its lowest value in October 1941 for $5,250 for all 66 acres instead of $40,000 like it was in the 20s. On a 10-year amortization arrangement, it was paid back to them in due course. In 1964, the small piece of property held by a trust was deeded to the school. Pictured here is Grandma Arganbright in the center. Those Great Depression years took their toll in hardship for all who knew life during the 30s. The student body was as low as 15 students. I remember it very well. But there was always food on the table and the payroll was met, as little as it was. In the late 30s, the number of students increased to around 60. The largest graduating class thus far of 13 in 1939. Also in 1939, the old farmhouse which originally housed most of the school and its activities had been destroyed by fire while Murphy relatives were living in it.
On June 17th of 1937, Monte Vista Christian School became incorporated as a nonprofit corporation with Leland R. Keyes, Donald G. Weston, James Price, Nell Price, and Robert O. Price as its first trustees. Both Donald Weston and Leland Keyes have been friends of Robert O. Price from the school's beginning.
The South Dorm was built in 1938-39, and in the 70s was made into a triplex for staff residences. Martha Saylor came to Monte Vista in 1940 as a freshman, and for all 4 of her high school years. During her senior year, she and Don Price became good friends, and they were married in December of 1944. After completing his college work, Don taught at Monte Vista and finished his master's degree, later becoming principal. Jim Price taught for a short time at Monte Vista, and he and his wife, Anita Stewart Price, became missionaries for 25 years in Peru with Wycliffe Bible translators, where Jim served as a jungle pilot. The student body during the 40s stayed between 65 and 75 students. The first half were war years, with their many struggles. The dining room had been in the basement of the administration building, but more room was needed, and a new dining facility was built in 1948. It is still in use today, with 2 additions in the 60s and 70s to accommodate more students and staff. An airstrip was developed near the present stadium, and a hangar was built. Quite a number of friends, parents, and staff flew into this small strip. This created a lot of interest among the students. The 50s were days of transition and learning to trust the Lord. It was obvious that the administrative responsibilities of the school would soon have to change direction because of the illness of R.O. Price. Don and Martha Price could not see how Monte Vista could survive without R.O. Price. He was such a dynamic man. With much prayer over the matter, a scripture verse was made real to them, It was, God will provide. In the Bible, in Genesis, God had provided the ram for Abraham, and he would provide for the school. With faith, the school went forward. A strong, united staff were the backbone of the school and helped hold the school steady during these difficult days. The staff, including both teachers and non-teaching personnel, have through the years sacrificially shared in the work of the school from its inception until the present time.
John and Lorna Saylor came to become permanent staff members in 1950 after both finished San Jose State and greatly strengthened the school. But in 1956, John was stricken with polio, leaving him completely paralyzed, except for partial use of one hand and arm. Nell Price suddenly passed away in 1957. R.O. Price was sick. Financial struggles were always at hand, and problems seemed overwhelming. How thankful we were for that scripture that God would provide, and the school continued with confidence because of it. A year later, Mr. Price married Ruth Evelyn, a 1930 MV graduate whose husband had passed away. Ruth loved R.O. and took good care of him during his last 18 months. After his death in 1959, she spent the next 30 years of her life developing and maintaining the school library, which was R.O. Price's strong desire. It was very difficult to know that this patriarch was no longer here to operate the school. All who knew him were impressed with his genuineness, his sterling character, and his sincere sacrifice in performing the task he so strongly felt led of God to do. It was these attributes that so endeared him to those with whom he worked and dealt. Other facts about the 50s were, on April 12th of 1954, Monte Vista Christian School was made into an irrevocable non-profit corporation, which meant the school could never be sold to benefit anyone. Also in February of 1957, R.O. Price resigned as president, and Don Price was chosen in his place. John Saylor came back into the classroom, although in a wheelchair after being hospitalized for a year. He was able to continue teaching for 20 more years, and besides being a strong teacher in math and science, was a great example to many young folks. The Monte Vista Messenger was published in 1951 with Tommy Nickel, printer and journalist, and it has been printed on a regular basis ever since. Tommy Nickel is the one on the right. The print shop was built to accommodate all of the printing that was done, but now it has been made into a beautiful music building. The student body totaled more than 100 at the end of the 50s. The first phase of the new boys' dorm was begun in 1959 and occupied in 1960. Another addition was made in the late 60s, and a second story was added in the 70s through the efforts of Roy Jackson and Lyle Olson.
The 1960s were exciting years, with fine students and much progress being made in many areas. In 1962 to 1963, Monte Vista applied for and received accreditation with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. After the visitation was all over, one of the professors on the visitation committee said that if he had had a daughter, she would come to Monte Vista, for he had never seen such loyalty and commitment by both students and staff. This was the second year of the Western Association's being in operation. The athletic program became organized through the efforts of Dale LeBeck and C.C. Richardson. The Quonset gym was built by Harry York by moving the Quonset building piece by piece from the San Jose area at a total cost of under $5,000 and a lot of hard work. It was a great day for Monte Vista to have a gym. A new grade A dairy was built in 1960 through the efforts of Mrs. Jackson. Her son Roy operated the dairy, and the students enjoyed the fresh, rich milk for many years. The student body was growing with up to 150 boarding students and a few day students. The dorms were at capacity. These were good years, and our teams were also doing well in competition. The 1970s showed great growth in every area. The new girls' dorm was begun in 1970 and finished in 1971. Robert Stotts, NV alumnus, and Mrs. Richard Hellman of the Hellman Mayonnaise Company were responsible mainly for paying for this building. The Lord brought several key people to work so that Monte Vista could go forward. Lyle and Judy Olson came in 1970, and through Lyle's vision, the campus was beautified and the facilities enlarged to accommodate the growing student body. Lyle finished the girls' dorm, put all the utilities underground, supervised the building of the swimming pool, wealthy villa, built a library science complex, and put acres of ground in lawn or blacktop. Dale LeBecq was active in the academic area, serving first as registrar and then high school principal. Clark and Linda Wetzel came in 1974, starting as a boys' dorm dean science teacher and later becoming principal of the high school. He had a vision for more day students and steadily began working in that area. Paul Lyons was athletic director and kept improving and enlarging the sports program. Ed Cottingham worked in the financial area. All of this improvement to the campus could not have been done without friends of the school that gave property in the Oakland area. They were Rod Busk, Oliver Fox, and Jack Wade. This property was sold and the money used for the campus improvements. The 70s finished with about 400 students. The baseball field was built in the 70s and in the 80s was improved with dugouts and a beautiful view of the campus. The daily busing program to pick up day students began with one bus route in about 1978. Other bus routes were added as needed. Today we have 8 daily bus routes, which include Santa Cruz, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, Salinas, Monterey, and Watsonville, and transporting about 375 students to school.
Monte Vista has always had a couple or more horses. R.O. Price rode his horse around campus and to see various projects. In the late 1970s, the horse program took over the MV Dairy building and began to expand with a few more horses until today, in the 1990s, there are over 30 horses. We have PE classes in horsemanship in both English and Western riding, award-winning after-school vaulting, and 8 weeks of equestrian camps in the summer.
The 80s continued with great progress. Dale LeBecq had a vision for a lounge in the girls' dorm. He, along with Mary Jackson's input, planned the building, and Harry York built it in 1982. A group of interested friends joined together and were called the Board of Regents, with Dave Hart chairman. They helped pay for this much-needed building. The large gymnasium was next. Dale again was responsible for the design and the supervision of it. Bob Erickson contributed 4 months of his time to come and be the general contractor for the building. It was begun in July of 1984, and the first phase, which was the actual gym, was dedicated in November of that year. The rest of that building was finished over the next several years. The gym was a project of the Board of Regents. When it was finished, it was completely paid for. Other friends of the school also helped. The large, beautiful gymnasium made possible greater involvement with the community in our sports program. How grateful we are to the many that had a part in it. The 80s finished the decade with the October '89 earthquake, which made the old administration building unusable for students. And so classes were placed in every available location, such as lobbies, staff dining room, girls' lounge, and other places throughout the entire school. The student body was now up to 700.
The middle school was also growing with Jim Hyman, who served as principal during much of the 80s. Because of the earthquake, a permit was obtained in record time in April of 1990 to build a new administration classroom building and replace the earthquake-damaged old main building, and work began immediately. It was finished in 4 months and ready for occupancy the day after school began. The classes on the first day were held outside on the lawns, and it was a very exciting time to receive the occupancy permits and get to move into such a beautiful facility. Lyle Olson, along with Clark Wetzel and others, planned the buildings, and Ike Willis contributed his time as general contractor. In 1995, the old administration building was taken down in a day. It was hard to see it come down as we thought of the many lives that had been changed in it and the 60 years that it had spanned, but it was also exciting as we realized that a new building would rise in the same place, a chapel performing arts building.
It was decided in 1992 that Monte Vista should join the Santa Cruz County Athletic League, so we wouldn't have to commute such distances, and our day student parents could more conveniently attend the games. It was also decided to begin a program of playing football in the local athletic league. Work was begun in the stadium, in the apple orchard, and the airstrip area. Many thousands of yards of dirt were moved by our own staff over several months using our own 90,000-pound Euclid. Grass was planted, and the stadium was dedicated in October of 1993. The setting was beautiful, bordering on Spring Hills Golf Course, and several from other schools said it was the most beautiful in the county of Santa Cruz. Our athletic program has increased to 56 teams with over 450 students participating from middle and high school in both boys and girls sports. In the 90s, our boarding program became filled with many international students, and today over 3/4 of the boarders are foreign students. We are thankful for these added opportunities to present Jesus Christ to them. Rod Gwynn, on the left, served for many years as boarding director and later became the high school principal. In November of 1993, Don Price resigned as president and Clark Wetzel was chosen in his place. Clark had served previously as the boys' dorm dean, science teacher, principal of the high school, and superintendent for nearly 20 years, which all made it easy for him to step in as president. Don Price then became president emeritus.
Outstanding teachers are the heart of any strong academic program, and that is true at MV with a wide offering of courses which challenge and inspire students to excel. The entire staff serves as a model of support to all the young people, taking time to communicate with students to help unlock each individual's potential. In looking back over the last 70 years, we can truly say that Monte Vista Christian School is his story. Without God's faithfulness and his hand on the day-to-day operations of the school, it would have failed countless times. Many friends who have prayed daily for the school and supported the school in various ways have been important in its growth and operation, and are still important. By careful planning and spending through the years and the Lord's faithfulness to Monte Vista, the school is debt-free. How we praise the Lord for this fact. From the original 66 acres, which was purchased in 1941, the school has been able to expand to include 100 acres. The apple trees are all gone, and in their place are beautiful grounds and facilities.
Mr. Wetzel wrote, "Being one of the oldest secondary Christian schools in the nation is no small thing. To be operating successfully for 70 years is cause for celebration. Let me hasten to add that it is not because of any one person, or not even all of us collectively. For God, in his infinite grace, has blessed MV. Miracle after miracle has been witnessed from the prompting of the founders through the years of hardship to today's challenge as we educate over 1,000 students a year. A humble prayer of thanksgiving is given for God's multitude of blessings.
Monte Vista has been covered with prayer from the beginning until now. For nearly 150 years, the property has been owned and maintained by Christians, and prayer has been the key that unlocked God's bountiful supply.
Mr. Wetzel recently wrote, "Many committed men and women have left their mark on this campus and on the lives of students and parents as well as their fellow staff members. As we labor today, we stand upon a foundation that was laid by all those who were called to serve for a time at MV." He continues by saying, "There can be no misunderstanding that MV stands firm and will continue to defend the faith, teach moral and ethical values, pursue excellence in all we do, and daily challenge our students to aspire to high standards. We are today in agreement with the Founding Fathers in 1926. We need to be a beacon of truth and light. As we build upon the vision of R.O. and Nell Price, and as we daily review our continuing vision for the future of this school, we must never lose sight of whom we serve. Lord, give us energy and deeper commitment to that goal."
MV's look may be different than during the early days, with newer buildings, a beautiful campus, and many more students. But our goal remains the same. As our numbers have increased, we are reminded that our responsibility increases, and our opportunities grow to help young people mature in their faith and to meet Jesus Christ as Lord of their lives.